Welcome back, Sebastian here. So today I'm going to be doing my power rankings for the Hungarian Grand Prix. So obviously setup looks a bit crude and it's also quite temporary. I've been traveling the last couple days, so finally had to kind of settle for what I could. So starting right away at number 20, this driver moved down 3 positions from last time, and that is Zhou Guangyu. Obviously had his best qualifying in Formula 1, qualified 5th. But then made that really bad mistake at the start of the first lap. Basically took out both Alpines, Ocon and Gasly. Had a little bit of a small lockup. Was given a 5-second penalty for that, and then was also kind of behind his teammate Valtteri Bottas. So even though the qualifying was amazing, I generally do put a lot more stock into the race, and the race, to be honest, was not that good. Number 19, moving down 1 position, is Logan Sargent. So for Sargent, bit of a tricky weekend. Out-qualified by Albon again, so that's 11-0 for Albon in qualifying, which is a bit of a surprise to me. Sargent was really highly regarded for his qualifying in Formula 2, so that's something that's definitely a bit strange. Also made that mistake at the very end of the race, spun at the turn 5-6 chicane, was forced to retire. Obviously didn't really have a massive result on the end result for him or for the team. That being said, still a small mistake in the race, and those mistakes could be costly in the future. Number 18, moving up 1 position is, see if we can fit it, yes, Kevin Magnussen. So for Kevin Magnussen, out-qualified again by Hulkenberg. This has definitely been an ongoing theme the last 5 or 6 races, I would say. The race, I think, is not much better, and I think because he's constantly starting so far behind his teammate, he's never really able to catch up in the race, especially with how poor the tire deck is on that Haas. Number 17, also dropping 1 position, yes, dropping 1 position, is Lance Stroll. So for Stroll, knocked out in Q2, not a great qualifying. That being said, the Aston Martin had a pretty poor weekend, only finished 1 position behind his teammate. That being said, we're still finished about 20 odd seconds behind his teammate in the race, which over about 70 laps is about like 3/10 of a second a lap behind his teammate. I know they're on different strategies, but still it's not a great result at the end of the day. Number 16 is probably one of the biggest movers down of the weekend. Dropping 4 positions, and that is Yuki Tsunoda. So I think for many, obviously, there's a lot of anticipation about this coming weekend about how Tsunoda would do against Ricciardo. And for me, I think the expectation going into the weekend was that Tsunoda had to beat Ricciardo in qualifying. Generally, it takes a bit of time to get up to speed in qualifying, and the race as well. But generally, I find with qualifying coming in right off with the bat with no time in the car, qualifying can be a bit of a struggle. But Ricciardo out-qualified Tsunoda first time of asking in the race. I think Tsunoda had a bit of a shocker with strategy, which isn't really on him. That being said, his teammate, who is yet to appear on the board, did a really excellent job of managing the strategy he was given. Number 15, dropping 5 positions. And I don't know with this driver, it's hard to say. I can't really blame them too much, but the reality is they've retired from the last 2 races, and that is Pierre Gasly. So for Gasly, a bit of a tough weekend. Obviously out-qualified his teammate, which is good, but at the same time, also basically didn't really have a race, so it's really hard to say. And he hasn't really had many good results recently, so it's really hard to say that he's been doing well. So I think just as a consequence of other drivers having a decent weekend, I thought, he moves down. Number 14, our new debutant. So obviously, Nick De Vries is nowhere to be seen on this board. He's not in Formula 1 anymore, so therefore he's not in my power rankings. And replacing him, making his season debut in the AlphaTauri, is Daniel Ricciardo, who I put at 14th. So for Ricciardo, I honestly think he out-qualified Tsunoda. That was more than I was expecting. And then had a really nice stint on the 40-lap stint on the mediums. Or was it the hard? I don't know. I can't remember. But he had a really nice 40-lap stint, made the one-stopper. Was it a one-stopper? One-stopper last, I believe. And had a really good result. And those were the kinds of results that we were seeing at Renault, where he was doing such a good job in 2019 and 2020. So if we can get more of that, he will continue to move up this board in the coming races. Number 13, I think a slightly better weekend, and that's mostly just because qualifying was a bit less of a disaster than usual, and that was Sergio Perez. Getting into Q3 for the first time since Miami is a big achievement, but that being said, it shouldn't be a big achievement. He's driving a Red Bull. He should be qualifying in Q3 easily every single race, and since it's the Red Bull, it should even be top 4 at minimum. That being said, P9 recovered to podium in P3. I think it's okay. It's the very, very bare minimum. I do think he should be finishing P2 more often than he is. And that's something that, especially the qualifying pace, is something that he's going to have to work on in the coming races, especially as the field is getting so tight. Number 12, also moving up. Really impressive qualifying again by this driver, and that is Nico Hülkenberg. So Hülkenberg, really good qualifying again, qualified in the top 10. Race fell back, but at this point, I don't really deduct too much from Hülkenberg's performance because of that, because it is a Haas, and we know from 11 races over this year, we know that it is a really poor car in qualifying, or not in qualifying, in the race. In the qualifying, it's actually quite good. Let's see, 11th. This driver I thought had a surprisingly good weekend, and that is Valtteri Bottas. So I know no point starting 7th. I think he'd probably be a little bit disappointed with that. But that being said, I don't think points were really on the cards anyway. Also, both Alphas had an absolutely horrific start, dropped boatloads of positions. That being said, I think Bottas did really well to recover to 12th place. I believe he finished, 12th place. Which is, maybe he would be wishing he was finished ahead of Albon. But that being said, still a better recovery, and he did beat his teammate Joe. Number 10, moving in the top 10, dropping 2 positions, and this is kind of for similar reasons to Gasly. 2 DNFs in the last 2 races. There's not really a whole lot of positive performances to go off of. And also for Ocon, he was out-qualified by his teammate Gasly as well, so he doesn't even have a qualifying head-to-head win to kind of pull back on, say, that to take away as a positive from the weekend. So all in all, he's been really sliding down the last 3 to 4 races after that really good point between Monaco and Canada. And I can't really say more because, he's DNF'd the last 2 races. Number 9, I think a tricky weekend again for this driver, and that is Carlos Sainz. So for Sainz, it looked like he had an amazing start on the soft tire, came up right to the back of his teammate Charles Leclerc, didn't get past his teammate, and then was kind of aided by Ferrari's 9-second pit stop for Leclerc. But that being said, did look a little bit behind Leclerc in terms of overall pace throughout the weekend in both qualifying and the race. But that being said, wasn't too far off, and I think didn't really hurt them too much, and kind of got what was expected of the team, given how slow, I guess, they've looked this weekend. Let's see, number 8, moving up 3 positions. Oscar Piastri. So for Piastri, 5th place finish, I think he'll be a little bit disappointed with that. But that being said, qualifying was quite good, pretty close to his teammate Norris. And the race, I think the first stint of the race was really, really incredible. Got an excellent start, was up into P2 for the entire first stint. I think he never was able to get the hard tires working properly, and just kind of lost a lot of time to both Norris, Perez, and Hamilton. Third stint was a bit better, but that second stint I think kind of cost him a podium today. And I think he'll be seeing his teammate get 2 podiums, and of course his teammate's nowhere on this list yet. But his teammate got 2 podiums in a row. I think he's going to be wearing the same. I think he's going to be very, very close to getting his first podium in the next 3 to 4 races. I think if McLaren can keep this pace up. Let's see, number 7. I think a bit of an under the radar performance, but nonetheless a really good performance. I think, Piastri's George Russell in 7th, stays in the same position. Qualifying 18th, I think it's hard to say. Obviously, when I make these judgment calls about where to put my driver in the power rankings, and I see a driver qualifying well out of position, of course his teammate got pole, I have to think about how much of that was due to the team making a strategy error and how much of that was the driver. And I think it's hard to say. I think obviously Russell, if you go and watch Russell's onboard from his final qualifying lap, he loses so much time in the final corner because he basically has to get out of the way of Gasly, who basically just runs through. So I think a bit more blame to the team for that, for basically being so risky with the strategy in qualifying. But that being said, Russell didn't deliver the lap, but he had a very, very good Sunday. He was making up heaps of times and almost overtook Charles Leclerc on pace after starting 18th. So really, really good result for Russell. And I do think actually in the race he was maybe a little bit better than Hamilton. That being said, it's hard to tell because they were in different phases of the race for pretty much the entire time. Let's see, number 6. Yeah, number 6 staying in the same position again is Charles Leclerc. So for Leclerc, tough race. Of course, had an okay qualifying, not a great qualifying, I think just okay. I think they were expecting a lot more given how many slow speed corners there are. But that being said, the 9-second pit stop did not help. The pit lane speeding, I think, it is Leclerc's fault, but it's such a minor infraction. It was by such a minor amount basically he went over by such a low amount that it's not a big deal, I think. The 5-second penalty did cost him in the end, though, so that will suck. But that being said, across the weekend, he did look better than his teammate Carlos Sainz, so I've kept him in a 6th place. Now into the top 5, driver at number 5, staying at number 5, and that is Alex Albon. So for Albon in the Williams, not a whole lot to say. Qualifying was a bit rough, which I think was to be expected given that slow speed corners is definitely a characteristic that the Williams has struggled at with this year. They were very, very slow in Monaco, so I think we kind of expected the same here. I think they'll be a bit surprised that they finished so high. Of course, not points, but still a very good performance by Albon, and I think was like 4 or 5 positions clear of his teammate Sargent at the end of the race before Sargent spun. Number 4, dropping 1 position, and I think it's hard with this driver because I think the car is clearly getting worse compared to the rest of the field. So it's harder and harder for this driver, Fernando Alonso, to get those really standard performances. But that being said, 9th place, teammates finished 10th, but he did finish about 20 seconds ahead of his teammate. So how much of that should you attribute, right? And it's hard to say. I think that being said, I do think there's 3 drivers who I think have been a little bit better recently, but of course it's hard to say given that it's hard to say how much of his performance is because of the car and how much of it is because of him. But that being said, still get some points on the board. Fernando Alonso in 3rd. Now number 3, a really excellent Saturday. Sunday was not so good, but that being said, Saturday was so good that I think I felt justified moving this driver up. And that is, of course, Lewis Hamilton, who got pole, his first pole since Jeddah 2021, a very, very long time. And I do think that Red Bull should have gotten pole this weekend. And Hamilton had a near perfect lap. He set 3 green sectors, but didn't set a single purple sector. So I think it shows that he had a really, really nice run, and other drivers had individual sectors that were really good too, but they just couldn't hook up the whole lap together. So really excellent for him. I think could have been a little better on the start. If he had stayed P2 after the start, I do think he could have gotten a podium. But that being said, not the end of the world. 4th place, still pretty good. But that being said, he's going to be, wanting to get those podiums consistently, and he's going to be chasing that elusive win that he hasn't had since Jeddah 2021. Let's see, number 2. Really excellent drive. 2nd in my power rankings for a driver who's finished 2nd the last 2 races, and that's Lando Norris. So qualified 3rd. I think he was a little bit disappointed with that. Couldn't want it to be on the front row or even pole. But that being said, the race I thought was impeccable. Really excellent strategy and really excellent pace on the 2nd stint in the hard jam. I think that's really where he pulled that massive gap to Piastri. The 1st stint they were basically equal. Maybe Piastri was a little better. But that's on the hard tires. Norris was excellent, and that's really what gave him that 2nd place today. Of course, number 1. I don't even know, at some point I have to question why I keep this driver at number 1 the whole time. But that is, of course, Max Verstappen. So didn't get pole. I think you could justify putting Norris, maybe for that alone, you could justify putting Norris at number 1 and Verstappen at number 2. But that being said, race was excellent. Won by 36 seconds, had an absolutely clinical start, actually for once had a really good start. And I think from there, it was really just about managing the pace, controlling the pace, and he built himself a really nice gap over P2. And of course, gets his 7th win in a row, which is something that I think only 5 drivers, including himself, have only ever done. So of course, Ascari, Schumacher, Vettel, and Rosberg, and now himself as well. So that's all for my power rankings. I hope you enjoyed it. Of course, we have a doubleheader, so we'll be back again probably Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, for my preview for next weekend's Belgian Grand Prix. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.